Okay, welcome back to the fourth installment of this Cadillac makeover. This is a 1947 Cadillac, formerly a hearse. I bought it with nothing behind the cab. It was just a frame and the front cab. Somebody cut off the whole box, and it was a perfect project for me to begin. Here you could see how far along I've come since the last episode. I built out a lot of the wood. There's still some stuff to be added on, of course. Mechanically, everything seems to be okay. We are doing the wiring. I'm going to go over that in just a few minutes when I get into the video. But here you could see, as of today, this is the end of July 2025, where we are. But let's go back to May of 2025. And this is how the last video ended. You could see the grill is just in place. The headlights are missing. But take a look at the back. The back was well underway, but you could still see there was lots of problems to solve. The pillar right there was leaning back. I ended up cutting the pillar at the top and leaning it forward so it had the same rake as the other parts of the car. So now when you take a step back, you see that pillar in front of the rear wheel was just too upright. I had it going basically level north-south when it really should have been with the rake of the car. So the first thing I did after I finished that last episode was cut the top of both of those pillars and lean them forward. And now what you're looking at, this is all old flooring from my restoration of my graveyard house. We ripped out the floor, as you might remember in a previous episode, and all this hard beech wood. It's the craziest how hard it is. I'm milling it all up to be the floor inside of the car. And I'm using a combination. I'm using some Type Bond. I'm using some Total Boat. Wherever there's mismatched surfaces, I'm using Total Boat Thick-So. It's the best material to fill in between the two mismatched surfaces. And there you see the hump over the rear axle. And I did the ramp up the front. By the end, you'll see that it all gets completely covered. Now, lots of details. The threshold on each side. If I didn't make it clear before, these doors on each side of the car, on the broad side of each side of the car, are going to be gull-wing doors. And I jokingly say I faked a lot of this joinery. I really did. Instead of putting big giant chunks of wood here and there, you could see how I'm laminating it. Partially to cover up some of the steel work, partially because I'm not exactly sure what and where I'm going. Now, the new 1946 grill, which is the grill I'm putting on this car, it's from the previous year of this particular model. I had to lower the parking lights, so I just cut them and lowered them. And I had the clip, so I just added it in. But here I am working in all these different bits and pieces. Whenever I had nice match surfaces, I used Type Bond 3. And you could see here I used a lot of Doug Fir 4x4s that I got from Home Depot and Lowe's. Actually, I got them from Lowe's. Home Depot doesn't carry them. And between the good quality vertical straight grain that I got from Rob's sawmill, Rob's works at a sawmill called First Cut, and between the really good wood and the Lowe's wood, I was able to disguise a lot of the Lowe's wood with laminate of the good wood. And that's just the way I could do a lot of the structure. What you just saw in that previous shot was a really long piece of pine just laid on it to give me the idea of where the long strip's going to be. Now, these is some more flooring, and I was throwing it through the planer, but you could see lots and lots of little tack holes and stuff. So what I ended up doing is just cutting it on the table saw. Swirl marks, saw marks, mismatched surfaces, it's all going to be okay because I want this car to be a little rough. I'm giving myself a lot of room. I'm not going to beat myself up trying to get things perfect. And with Thick-So, I could fill in every crack. Now, a lot of you guys gave me these license plates, and you might recognize some of them right now. I'm using a pair of tin snips to get these to fit, and this is my inside wheel wells. I might go back and spray on the other side of those wheel wells with some bed liner. But in the meantime, now I have to build out the doors on the side. The doors on the side are going to go up, like I said, and now I need to make an independent frame that will go up and around. And here you see this is really good with the 4x4, how I'm able to sculpt it into shape. And there you see. And I'm using this bandsaw, which is a huge a huge asset to what I'm doing here, because this bandsaw I'm able to rip long thin strips. I'm also able to resaw lots of stuff, and I can just jump right back and forth. That's my new Harvey Intelligent bandsaw, 15-inch Harvey Intelligent. So now I have spacers between each one of these pieces and the door jamb. Now that's where it's going to be hinged. Now I need to make these two surfaces from there to there, and then I'll have a full door frame. And a lot of the time I'm spent splitting materials. Sometimes I'll do it on the bandsaw like I suggested, but other times I just do it, I cut up and down. You can cut pretty much a 6-inch piece if you're cutting up and then down. And a lot of this was just freestyling. I wasn't getting too crazy. I did make some tape and paper patterns, which you'll see in a few minutes. But for the most part, I just freestyled and guessed and creeped up on cuts. And again, wherever my cuts went too far, and I just used Thick-So. And I'm using a pen nailer to keep the parts from sliding around while the Thick-So grabs. And then later on, when I'm able to pull this door frame out, I put screws in the appropriate spots. So the Thick-So gets me through the quick rough-in construction. And now, as in a typical Woody, you have the long prominent stripe that goes under the window, under the passenger and the driver's door window, that goes from front to back. And then you have another rib. It's just a classic setup. If you asked ChatGPT to draw a picture of a Woody, you would always have these same lines. And so I'm following the tradition. But what you see here is I'm using these thin strips to give me the level line so that I know exactly where I'm going to add my next piece. The structure right there in the middle of the door, and then the structure that I'm about to add there inside the back window area, is just that structure. But the actual finished body line is going to come right off under that window right here where I'm pointing the camera. And then it's going to wrap all the way over into the back. It's going to give me that long, sexy line. These are just straight solid chunks of like 1 1/4 maybe. And they're getting glued in between the pillars. And then, of course, on the gull wing door frame. Now, these are going to add structure. And then I take this huge long piece of vertical grain Doug fir that I have, and this is about 16 feet long. This is left over from the rowboat build I did a couple years ago. Again, this is a piece from first cut. And now I'm ripping it into 1/4-inch strips. It's 3 inches by 1/4-inch strips. And there you see. And now I have laid this piece up on the door. Now that goes from the door all the way to the back. I don't know why I'm missing that shot. But here you see how I'm able to take a piece and mimic that body curve. I cut my waist out and glue it right on top. So it's not necessarily waist. I just cut the piece from the bottom and flip it over and glue it to the top, and it gives me that whip up curve. Whereas you might assume I would need a full chunk that was at least as big as that to bandsaw that shape out of. I don't. Now here, that was the driver's side. I'm going to show you right now the passenger side. And now that piece is just loosely clamped onto the car all the way to the back. And now you see that with my Starrett calipers, I'm able to draw that line that matches. And with a little jigsaw, I'm able to cut off that piece and save it. And then that gets glued to the other side to create the up curve. And then that little square tab gets cut off at the end. But you could also see how I'm using my screw clamps. And here you see I'm gluing them at all the key points. And then, of course, when that long strip projects off of that door panel, it creates a curve that goes out and back in towards the back doors. And I'm just using Thick-So to keep it clamped onto the door. And that's that long strip that I just cut on that 16-foot piece. And now I'm letting that fall naturally into the curve where it hits the pillars. I'm not pushing it back into the structural piece. You can almost see in some of the spots. I should have given it more of a highlight. Same thing here. How it projects off of the curve of that door skin, and I let it pull back in kind of like a bow of a bow and arrow. And however that lands on the back of the car, then I fill in all the gaps in between. And now here I'm using my Temple saw to cut. So if you realize I glued that wood across the car and didn't cut any of it until all the epoxy joints had solidly dried. Do you need a cushion, my friend?
I need everything I can get.
Should I move this glass? This is Keith from Blackthorn Concepts. Links in the description. Keith is doing the wiring harness on the car. He volunteered. So thank you, Keith. We've got push. We've got push. Grab my guys. Yeah, not bad. We missed the distributor. That's good. Keith, once this is all going, we'll do an interview, okay?
Okay. I don't need to be in this video. You can lie and tell everyone you wired it.
I just got what I needed. That's all I needed.
Oh, I'm break glass, didn't I? Yeah, I think this is blinker, horn, blinker, but I gotta get in here.
That's like a volume.
This knob
Oh.
is to set your clock.
Yep. Shit. God damn it. You're right. Do it again. There it goes. Holy shit. Got them all. They're all come through. Pull tight.
No. Pull it. Keep going. You videoing me zip tying shit? Mm-hmm. Taking the cheater way out.
Whoa.
Bingo.
Pretty easy. How is the steering wheel on the 5046? Is it better shape?
I'm not sure. We should check it out.
There you go.
Cool.
Is it just a friction fit or is there a slide? Is there a pin in there?
Just a friction fit, though, is it? It has a key for a keyway, but there's no key here.
Is it knurled?
Yeah.
That's Rob pulling off the steering wheel so that we can get at the electrical for the horn. Now here you see me adding the bottom strip. Typically, as I said, the Woodies have one right across the main section of the car, then one below, and then one, of course, at the very bottom between the two wheels. Now you see how I'm just using those clamps to get a really nice tight fit so the Thixo has its room to cure right to the car. Those clamps, everything's going to get veneered on the white door. So I don't mind about those screw holes. And I'm trying to keep a spacer everywhere. Now here you see these pieces, these small little weird curved pieces. These all had to be bandsawed from a thicker piece. I could not bend them to fit, at least not easily. It's actually more simple to just bandsaw them up out of a 1 inch or 1.5 inch thick piece, as long as the curve fit in there. Now here I am just adjusting it. Like I said, this bandsaw was a big savior for this project. Now there was a couple of bandsaw streaks in it, so I'm just hand planing those bandsaw streaks out with my Hillview wooden metal tool. Now the inside cup, I'm using the bandsaw, the rake on the teeth, just dragging backwards to clean out a little bit of very shallow cup so that can fit on the curve of the door panel, the exterior of the door. And that's how I'm able to do these subtle curves. There's another one from the other side. And everything gets glued in place with some Thixo. Anytime there's real wood to metal with some gapping, I'm using the Thixo. And there you go. And Thixo is an epoxy that mixes in the tip. So when you pull the trigger, it comes through a zigzaggy tip that mixes everything together. And then when you are done with it, you just let the tip cure. It's going to cure at the end of the tip. You won't be able to use it again, but you leave it on so that the Thixo that's in the tube still stays fresh. So it basically, by default, becomes your cap each time you're done using it. So this way you don't have to crack a tube and use the whole tube up. You can preserve the tube by just changing the tips as needed. So now those strips again went all the way across everything, so I have a nice fair curve. So I'm cutting them after all the glue is cured, and now I'm breaking that out. So now there's the door. Again, some Thixo. This is an old trick. I'm actually Thixo or epoxying the hinges that are already attached to the top of the door, or they're attached to the top threshold there, and I'm gluing them in so that when it cures, I could gently open the door here a couple hours later, prop it up with a stick, and then quickly get some screws in there. This way I know my alignment was exactly how I left it before the glue cured or before the epoxy cured. Anytime I have a difficult door installation, I'll either use CA glue or epoxy. You don't get too many tries to open the door though, because it'll probably break right off since the nickel-plated hinges won't hold that epoxy. So you have a few seconds to be able to get that air without any banging around to be able to get the screws in. And there you can see Keith has got our headlights working. And now here I am detaching the other side using my zig-a-zig-zig. And here I am able to pull that door out. So like I said, those strips, all that grain pattern goes all the way from the rearview mirror all the way to the back tail light. Now this was some other construction I needed to hide. I'm hiding a lot of the early construction with laminate. So as I get towards the end of the build, I had a little bit of a tough time, and it sort of worked itself out without too much input for me. What piece stays higher than what piece? Now there's a lot of construction there. You see how I was able to just use that blue tape to make the pattern, prepare that piece of 1/4-inch material, and then bandsaw it so it fit in there. So now I'm able to cover up. Early on in the videos, you could see I laminated the top of the fender, the curve, and then I ran out of steam and just added a bunch of chunks and said later on I'll just do a face veneer, and that's what that is. And I was able to use that tape to make my face veneer pattern, and now I'm working that in so it fits into the top of the chunks that create that frame around the curved fender. I'm just planing it all in, hand planing it all in together, working it in. When it's all said and done, it's going to look like one big, beautifully jointed car, but it's obviously going to be fake out. Now, this is an old trick. I'm bandsawing what's going to become the threshold for the bottom of the 2 rear doors. And I have my curve, bevel, and now I take my waist. There's my piece, my positive piece, and then my waist becomes the other side of the curve. And there, just like I did on the trim on the doors. And now I'll laminate that together with some type bond, and then I have a nice foundation for what's going to become the 2 rear doors. Now I'm making the top curve to fit inside all the curved doorway joinery that I did. And I'm doing I do a little quick fit up, and then I use my calipers, my Starrett calipers there, to scribe them in. So I scribe it in, so I do it close, and then I scribe it a little closer. I might have done it 2 or 3 times off camera, but that's how I get a nice tight fit into the top, or at least tight-ish. And you see I have those 2 pieces of wood clamped there, so I have a little bit of a relief from holding it in the air. And now I match the curve that matches the curve from the passenger to the driver's side door, or rather from starboard to port side. And now these are the uprights that have become the frame, the hinge side of each side of the door, the rear doors. And now this is the split. You could see, to maintain the curve, I'm making the 2 rear doors as one unit. Once I feel ready, everything's all jointed and glued up and epoxied and chooched up, then I'll cut them apart. But not until a couple days goes by, all my glue joints are nice and secure. I've been able to take the door frame out, add screws everywhere, hide those screws under Bondo or epoxy. And now I let this sit for a day or 2 while all those joints, which are really just butt joints, cure. And then once I pull everything apart, I put 6-inch screws and everything. Now here it is with the Bondo in place. I'm not getting too particular. The Bondo doesn't match in color, but I don't care. I'm hiding splinters and I'm hiding screw heads under the Bondo. And now I'm going to prepare my hinge pockets for the rear 2 doors. In an earlier video, I suggested that I was going to do paddy wagon style doors versus traditionally you see these doors, it's a tailgate down and a window up. I just thought this would be more interesting. And I'm just putting them in place, and there you see it's still one unit, and I decide to cut it in half right now so that I can then put the hinges in. I couldn't attach the hinges while it was still one big rear door. And I flip it over. I got really close, just paper thin from the outside edge there, so I didn't cut the car. And then here I was able to cut all the way through and then go up and cut the top all the way through. And again, just with my nice Temple pull saw. Beautiful and sharp. And there, here you see I got 2 doors, a left and a right. And then I fiddle with them off camera, getting them screwed in. I didn't want to bore the hell out of you with adjusting the screw heads. One day I'll do a video on how I get those adjusted correctly. But I'll usually put 1 screw in each hinge at a time and see where it fits, and then put the others in accordingly to shift the screws around, to shift the hinges around to get them all lined up. Now these hard ribs are just You see how they're just rabbited in on the bandsaw, and they pop in. I was saying it earlier, what piece of wood is going to be higher than what piece of wood? I just was having fun with it and just really just doing what felt right. If you notice that down the passenger side of the car, that one long strip is the most prominent proud. That's, in a way, that's the racing stripe on the exterior of the car. While the glue dries, I start making the running boards. This is 1x6 cedar from Lowe's. And I'm cutting off the roundovers on everything so I could mate them together. The running boards are about 9 inches wide, and these are 2/6s, so it gives me more than I need. I'm able to glue them together, trim off a little bit of it. The car has a really good mounting brackets for the running boards because this car did have pretty hardy running boards, but they were all bent up, so that's why I couldn't save them. I figured when the time comes, I'll just make them out of wood, and that's now. And I just scribed them to the front fender, and I scribed them to the back fender using my Starrett compass, caliper, whatever you want to call it. And there you could see how that's a better fit. I'll probably put a little round over on the front and back just so you don't hit your shins on it, at least not easily. And I'm just banging it in there. And it's sitting right on top of the running board brackets. And there it is. Getting closer. And this is me just visor dreaming, slowly figuring out what this eyebrow is going to look like. I keep calling it an eyebrow. I guess it's more of like a visor cap. This is probably going to be plasma cut steel so it gets rusty, just to add to the rust on the front of the car, which I'm not going to fix up. I'm going to keep this car looking like it's recycled from the junkyard. It's a rat rod after all. And you notice the headlight bezels are a different color, as are the rear fenders. Now, I took some time off camera and I made these filler pieces. I built them inside each one of the voids where I need to install my mahogany panel. And I let them dry for a couple days, and those become my patterns for inside each one of these cavities that are going to have. I don't know. There's nothing I could do about the camera going light and dark. I must turn off my auto exposure. It's annoying when it goes in fast forward and you get to see that. So now these fit snugly in there. They're just literally press fit inside, and then I'm using thick sew to fill the gaps. I put a couple of 23 gauge nails here and there to make sure that the panels don't shift around. These two rear panels are obviously nice and flat and right in space with almost no gapping. So in this case, I use Type-On 3, just tapping them so they're snug in place. I use Type-On 3 in this little syringe holder, and I'm able to just squirt it right into that gap. I'm going to insulate and panel the inside of the car as well, so there's going to be a lot more holding these panels in. And that insulation is going to obviously dampen a lot of the noise when you drive, but it's also going to thicken up and sturdy up the walls. And here you see it. I was able to fill in all those gaps with paneling, and everything's just snug fit and then epoxied and glued in place. Next, I have to veneer the door skins, and I'm going to do that with the same material. I'm just going to have to cut the back off somehow. But I'm really happy with the progress. I'm really happy with the way it's coming out. I won't be able to drive it until I get the wiring done. Obviously, we got the ignition set up so we could start the car from the inside. I might do a little sub panel under the dashboard that's going to carry all those switches and such. I don't want to really deal with the dashboard. I'm just going to leave it as is. It's a little rusted and corroded. So as far as oil pressure, gas, I'm just going to buy a couple of dials online, make a little sub dashboard that carries all those vitals. And here you can see that's the wiring harness that we still haven't really gotten up and under the car. But I want to show you the gull wing doors. Look at that. I have struts ready to put in place so that these gull wings will stay up and open. I still need to epoxy the top. That's going to be in another subsequent video. I'll probably do 2 more videos till this is completed. The windows and all the open gaps, at least for the rat rod show that I'm going to show in August, I'm not sure I'm going to even have any glass in there. What I might do is plasma cut some steel panels with some imagery on there. I think that would be fun. And maybe going into winter, I'll cut some plexi or maybe some polycarbonate glass to fill in the windows. And then I'm going to have to do some framework to carry the polycarbonate. And here you see some trim work that I was able to do to cover the gap on the back door. Obviously, everything needs more hardware. I need latches for the doors and struts to keep them open. These rear doors, I might just make some leather straps to hold them open. might feel more nostalgic. Thanks for following along. Find me on Patreon. On Patreon, you can see a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, lots and lots of behind-the-scenes stuff over the last 6 months of this. This is a real fun build. I'm having a really great time doing this. And thank you to Keith and everybody that supports me everywhere. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.